Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It will be our fifth session, session 5, and we are going to open another important chapter of the summit. This chapter is about digital infrastructure and economy. And we are going to follow the panel entitled Balancing Hard and Soft Infrastructure to Ensure Meaningful and Inclusive Connectivity. But as usual, we will have a keynote speech before, and our keynote speaker comes from Vodafone. When she was at Vodafone Greece, she established the Center of Excellence for Internet of Things in the Vodafone Group, repositioning Vodafone in the public sector and achieving highest ever customer satisfaction in the market. At present, she is the CEO of Vodafone Albania, aiming to become the first operator to roll out the 5G mobile infrastructure in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Katia Stataki, CEO of Vodafone Albania.
Distinguished guests, thank you for having me as a keynote speaker to open one of the most important sessions of the Digital Summit, the Network and Connectivity session. In a post-pandemic world, we are all aware of the growing importance of a strong and reliable network as a prerequisite to creating and supporting the digital economy. At Vodafone Albania, we have known this well for years, even long before the pandemic. We were the first in the Albanian market to introduce 3G and 4G, and are aiming to be the first to introduce 5G technology, following the footsteps of the Vodafone Group 5G investments all over Europe. Furthermore, last year, Forbes Qatar has highly praised our mobile network, ranking Vodafone Albania as the 8th fastest mobile network in the world. Albania is a country with a difficult terrain, which creates many challenges in deploying a state-of-the-art network. It is also a country where personal income is much below that of Western Europe. But despite all, the commitment of Vodafone Group to invest in Albania has been persistent, ranking Albania among world leaders in mobile infrastructure. However, nowadays, we don't only talk about mobile networks. The fixed infrastructure is equally important. Fixed and mobile are no longer complementary to one another. They are part of the same network, and as such, shall be developed coherently. As of early last year, Vodafone Albania has become a fully converged company. Our aim is to invest in fixed broadband infrastructure and to bring that to the same high standards where we have brought the mobile network. Distinguished guests, today we're all aware that the telecommunications sector is a vital part of our society. Connectivity is a service with almost the same importance as water and electricity. The pandemic made it even more visible to society, to consumers and businesses, that we need a network infrastructure that is inclusive and available in the same way in urban and rural areas in the country, in schools, universities, businesses, hospitals, everywhere. Therefore, at the heart of this digital need is the democratization of technology, where all citizens can receive an increased level of connectivity services with transparency, speed, thus giving value. I would like to bring to your attention an example of the enormous possibilities that digitization can bring, such as the Piraeus port in Athens, a neighbor to the Western Balkan countries whose digital agenda we're discussing today. The Port of Piraeus, while managed by a private company, constitutes one of the biggest infrastructures in the country with huge impact in the overall economy. It is a fully digitized port that operates 24/7, 365 days a year, uploading and offloading millions of containers through the use of a mobile private network, IoT technology, and telecoms infrastructure, bringing it to the top 3 ports in Europe. It is a great example that shows how investments in technology are vital for increasing efficiency and having an impact on the economy and all the investments around it. But to build a safe digital ecosystem, we need to have in place 3 ingredients. Number 1, the know-how that big global brands such as Vodafone have to offer. Number 2, the people with the necessary digital skills. Vodafone Albania has been building such a team in the last 20 years, also exploring this digital savvy brain to other Vodafone markets globally, And of course, number 3, a business-friendly environment where foreign direct investments in technology can blossom and continue investing in a sustainable, consistent manner. I would like to close with a message that operators, policymakers, stakeholders must work together in order to bring forward reforms that will allow the digitization path of the Western Balkan countries, so as to fully align with the region's ambition to EU integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katia Stataki, CEO of Vodafone Albania. And now we are ready for the panel. And I remind you that the title of the panel is Balancing Hard and Soft Infrastructure to Ensure Meaningful and Inclusive Connectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, I present you the moderator of the next panel. This gentleman is the head of the Office for Europe at the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, in Geneva. His work is focused on ICT infrastructure, digital inclusion, accessibility, innovation, and cybersecurity. He led ITU's work at the United Nations World Summit on the Information Society process. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jaroslav Ponder.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special session. I'm telling this is a special session because it's not only the discussion, but this will be the source of the inspiration for our work and our basically way forward, how to balance the soft and hard infrastructure and the approaches of the countries for going further. Broadband connectivity is of a great importance to make full use of the potential of internet, but how hard infrastructure, however, is no longer enough. Soft infrastructure such as institutions, laws, design and implementation of strategies and appropriate policies are needed. That's why during this session we'll seek to engage stakeholders in a holistic discussion around broadband development in the Western Balkans, focusing on the challenges and the success stories. This is the reason why it's my great pleasure to welcome with us great speakers of this session, coming from UNICEF, from Serbia, North Macedonia, EKIP, Kosovo, Montenegro, and MTEL. And it's also my great pleasure, before introducing the next speaker, to announce that this session also serves as the platform for launching a special report on connectivity and education in status and recent developments in 9 non-EU countries, including all Western Balkans, a special initiative of the ITU and UNICEF, and being also implemented under the aegis of the United Nations Digital Transformation Group on digital transformation for Europe and Central Asia. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will propose to run this session in the following manner. I will hand over now to the all speakers for introductory remarks for the 5 minutes, and then after which we'll enter into the questions and answers and the discussion. So without further ado, let me introduce the first speaker, Milan Ellison, Senior Advisor for Education, Europe and Central Asia Regional Office of UNICEF. Malin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jaroslav, and thank you for inviting us to this important session and this important summit. It's truly an honor to hear such a variety and richness of stakeholders in this session. I will share my screen. I hope you see it now. As we all have embarked on the Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, we also signed up for key principles such as the interdependency of SDGs and leaving no one behind. Education is one of the main vehicles to leverage digital transformation and spur prosperity. On behalf of UNICEF, I also like to stress the mission to reimagine education and to close the digital divide. In our region, our approach is called Learn In, and with a comprehensive approach, we are addressing the key dimensions of a digital ecosystem in both the hardware as in connectivity and devices, as well as the software of increasing capacity of school staff, as well as empowering of youth and children. And as Jaroslav said, we are very happy that in the spirit of the UN reform and revamping the regional collaboration, that we today have this launch of connectivity in education and the status and recent developments of these 9 countries, in which 5 Western Balkans are included. And ITU and UNICEF cordially invite you to a presentation and discussion of the report on the 10th of November. Worldwide, we see that 2/3 of the school-age children have no access at home, whereas in Western Balkan it's far better, but still there are 1/4 of the population that doesn't have access at home. And that is what I would like to speak about. And already before the COVID, we have to acknowledge that 4 to 16% of the children were out of school, and in which we found children from ethnic and linguistic minorities, more girls than boys in this area, as well as children with disabilities. And as a reflection of the learning crisis that was all over the world, but also in Western Balkan, the PISA results suggested that half of the 15-year-olds are not achieving minimum proficiency in the foundational skills needed for further education. The report of connectivity and education states a notable progress in percentage of the population covered by online 4G and LTE in the last 6 years. But we have to also look at the rate of the population falling outside digitalization. And the report shows an urban-rural divide, as the previous keynote speaker already addressed, as one of the key factors, as well as population living in poverty and living in remote location stands a very high risk of being left out. In terms of ICT and education, the region falls fast from the OECD average of 0.83 PCs per student and PCs in school with access to internet. Lessons learned is that a central broadband mapping is key to the identification of the school's accessibility, stability, and speed of the connect. And that also we've seen that this mapping exercise can reduce the connectivity cost. Foremost, we have to acknowledge the importance of the last mile connectivity and remote solutions. In addition, we have to foremost ensure that the infrastructures need to address the barriers as to why children was excluded from education and learning. Here, we cannot not enough underline the importance of inclusive digital learning. With digital assistive technology, that could be a game changer to overcome these learning barriers. We also see that we need to increase the numbers of computers in schools. And while waiting for this, we need to ensure that we have IT infrastructure availability, both the online and offline solutions. And when, in order to address shortages of devices, UNICEF has, over the COVID pandemic, supported countries in setting up mobile computers libraries as one of the examples. This hard infrastructure needs to be balanced with the soft side of the infrastructure, as Jaroslav stated. And I would like to mention 5 aspects. First, a capacity upshifting of school personnel that empowers teachers and learners to be key actors and leaders in inclusive digital transition. Secondly, we need to have a robust e-governance of education through digitalization of education management information system to support an efficient management and connectivity and digital tools. And again, with a special attention to the urban-rural divide, as well as a population living in socio-economic deprived circumstances to counteract the inequities in the system. We need to have education strategies and action plans that incorporate the inclusive dimension of digital learning, as well as we see over the past year that it's key that the documents also include the monitoring and evaluation systems of connectivity and digital tools. Not less important, it's also important to stress that it's all about providing safe learning opportunities. And he is stressing that the legal framework for digitalization of education and data protection have a particular role to look into how that is protecting children in vulnerable situations. And last and not least, echoing what the previous speaker already said, we need to have an enabling environment that drives innovation. We need, in order to have the perspective of inclusiveness, we need to have local solutions for connecting and enhancing digital skills so all young people have access to internet and thereby have access to quality learning and skills development for a world of work. I think my 5 minutes is up. I stop there. Over to you, Jaroslav.
Thank you very much, Malin. I think this was very much inspiring and you raised a lot of very pertinent items, but now having this in mind, let us dive into the different experiences of the countries. And I have on my list the first person, Vladana Radisavljevic, chairman of the board of Serbian Academic and Research Network, who is in fact chipping in and replacing Milan Dobrijevic, assistant minister, who had the urgency and could not join us personally. But let's hear to Vladana. What is the experience of Serbia in this respect?
Very much, Jaroslav. Good morning to you all. It is my pleasure to be here with you today and to actually participate at the Digital Summit and particularly at this session that addresses soft and hard infrastructure. I think that we are all aware of the fact how infrastructure, both hard and soft, is important in our everyday lives, in our work, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic. Allow me to present today briefly the activities of the Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Telecommunications, which is the line Ministry for Telecommunications in Serbia, in the broadband development. Actually, the digitalization itself is one of the key priorities of our ministry, as well as the government of the Republic of Serbia. And we can all agree, I think, that the basis of the digitalization is the infrastructure itself. Ministry is conducting continuous work on the development and deployment of broadband infrastructure in Serbia, both fixed and mobile. At the end of 2019, Ministry already conducted a survey or the availability of fixed broadband mapping was mapped, and actually at that time we obtained maps of broadband availability at the settlement level. Actually, the data were gathered from all electronic communication operators that have market share above 1%. And we addressed around 4,600 settlements. This way, with data on the settlement level, we obtained enough data to actually determine white and gray areas in our country. At that time, actually at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, the ministry and Serbia actually did not have implemented the state aid rules regarding the broadband development. So that was the place where we had to actually do something, let's say, with the soft infrastructure. So upon on the proposal of the Line Ministry for Telecommunications, the government adopted the regulation for the establishment of program for the use of funds for financing development measures in the field of electronic communications and information society. And this way, the EU guidelines for the application of the state aid rules in the relation to the rapid deployment of broadband infrastructure was implemented in Serbia. So consequently, in June 2020, we started with the project on a rural broadband rollout. And actually, we this way addressed the white and gray areas that we already mapped. In this project has two phases, and currently the first phase is on the way, and it is in plan for this and the next year. And in this phase, we are going to address around 470 settlements. So the plan is that the ministry will deploy the mid-mile infrastructure while the operators will deploy the last mile segment. This way, the last mile investment in targeted areas is becoming financially viable for operators. We have a financial support for this work from the WBIF Technical Assistance Fund and also from the EBRD. In this first phase, in order to invite and select private partners or operators for joint infrastructure construction, the ministry already conducted 3 public polls, and they were all conducted at the end of the last year. The mid-mile segment infrastructure will remain the property of the ministry, but it will be given to private partners, to operators for the long-term usage, and this long-term is 25 years. So also just to mention that selected operators in this project will have the obligation to deploy the last mile infrastructure covering at least 95% of households in targeted areas with at least 100 megabits per second. I already mentioned that the project has 2 phases, and the second phase is planned to start in 2023 and to last till 2025. We have these 2 parts of this phase. In the first phase, also the ministry will be the one deploying the mid-mile segment, and we are planning to address around 700 settlements, while in the last part of the project, the ministry will be the one that will deploy the whole infrastructure and consequently make it available to operators. This way, we are planning to cover another 600 settlements. The whole broadband development project aims to provide connectivity to all households in Serbia by 2025. So this will be the basic information, and thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thank you very much, Vladana, for this insight, and congratulations to the great progress. Mapping of the infrastructure, clear strategy, cooperation with the international donors and the financial institutions supporting the strategic projects. This is what we just heard, but let's now move to our next distinguished speaker, who is representing North Macedonia. Shpetim Latifi, advisor to the minister, is today with us, and the floor is yours. Shpetim, over to you.
Good. Thank you, Yaroslav. Good morning to you and to all the panelists and to everyone who is watching. It's nice to meet you virtually this morning. For all those who are in Podgorica, I am joining them physically in the afternoon. So I will share my screen and trying to be respectful of the reminder that the organizers have set of sticking to the time limit of 5 minutes and sharing no more than 3 slides. So the development of the electronic communications market and in general of the IT industry is really very important for North Macedonia, for our country's development and the transformation into a digital economy. So we also have key challenges that are affecting the sector, which is the state of the digital infrastructure, the high prices, which are coupled with lack of digital skills, which in turn hamper the adoption of productivity enhancing high-speed broadband connections. While the internet household penetration may not seem too far from the developed countries, we are at a rate of about 80%, which is only a few percentage points less than the average in the EU. The real state of broadband development in North Macedonia is constrained. And if these constraints and bottlenecks are not removed, the development of the country's digital economy will stall. Uneven distribution of high speed and quality broadband access reinforces the urban and rural divide, just like the representative of UNICEF previously mentioned. We have just done a study this year in North Macedonia, and we have a clear picture of this huge divide. Despite relatively high levels of internet penetration, North Macedonia does not have much future-proof connectivity of over 100 megabit per second. So the poor sector development hinders the growth of e-commerce domestically and internationally, which is a subset of digital economy that can spur growth across industries. The project that we are about to start in North Macedonia, which is North Macedonia Digital Economy or NODE project, is to improve access. I think I should move over to the next slide, by the way. I'm not sure if that changed anything with you. It could have now.
Please, good.
This project, the NODE project, is to improve access to high-speed broadband services in project areas and to online knowledge sources and services among citizens and public institutions. The government of Republic of North Macedonia aims to considerably improve the state of national digital or broadband infrastructure by investing in backhaul networks to benefit selected project areas. So the project will include the construction of the NODE network, connecting the white zones, just like the representative from Serbia has also mentioned similarly. So white zones, but also some justified gray zones. Also locations for free Wi-Fi internet access points, and connect all the public institutions like educational institutions, schools, universities, libraries, research centers, health institutions, ministries, courts, municipalities, and other state administration authorities and bodies. So beneficiary public institutions will be able to establish symmetrical access to ultra-fast broadband connectivity with speeds of at least 1 gigabit per second. Of course, we are now in the initial phase of performing a feasibility study to define the exact list of institutions, locations, number of households, and so on. North Macedonia has set specific targets when it comes to connectivity indicators in the digital economy and society index. As it can be seen from the slide, we need to increase our efforts in order to reach the average of EU countries in terms of connectivity, in parallel to investing in other key efforts in the process of digital transformation, such as electronic services, digital skills of both public sector and the general population, but also investment in cybersecurity, electronic ID, and interoperability with other countries, something that is being discussed among high-level state representatives exactly on this summit. So through the Node project, we aim to improve the state of national infrastructure for providing broadband internet, which is recognized as a key resource for improving competitiveness in both the Republic of North Macedonia and its socioeconomic development. And in that direction, most of the resources are precisely in the direction of providing digital infrastructure and connectivity. Our government will allocate over 25 million euros in the next couple of years, in addition to another 30 million euros for this project, to include all the initiatives, not only for the connectivity and infrastructure, but also all the services that I've mentioned, electronic services, electronic ID, cybersecurity, and so on. So all these initiatives can become a reality. It's a huge increase in investment. And as I would say, this is not 25 million euros to be spent, but rather millions of euros to be saved by saving human resources, time lost, paper, making the processes more transparent, speedy, more accurate, more reliable, and at citizens' convenience. Finally, the great challenge of the pandemic with COVID-19 turned out to be a great opportunity for rapid digital transformation. And we must seize this opportunity to accelerate progress towards connecting the region. We must unify our efforts and work across borders and across sectors to jointly raise the quality of life and speed up the economic recovery in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great intervention, and congratulations for this achievement of so many items and great vision of the minister who is making concrete steps in order to make this happen and implement. But let us now move to our next speaker, coming from Montenegro, host of the Digital Summit, Pavle Miuskovic, Deputy Director of Agency for Electronic Communications and Postal Services, EKIP, is with us today. And I'm handing over to him in case he's already connected. Pavle?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Ponder. I just wait for presentation. Okay. It is an honor to be a part of the Digital Summit, and I will take this opportunity to present the digital connectivity achievements in Montenegro. One of the agency goals is to provide a secure and predictable environment, and also to create conditions for development and implementation of new technologies. Next slide, please. In the last years, annual revenue of the telecommunication sector was at a level about 213 million, except the last year when it dropped to 211 million. In this period, the highest investment was in 2016, when investment was about 116 million, and the last year, operated invested about 61 million, but represent about 29% of the annual revenue. As you see on the slide, the number of internet users is growing, continuously growing from year to year, and at the end of June 2021, we have about 187,000 fixed broadband subscribers and about 572,000 mobile internet users. According to the Monstat data, 77.6% of population of Montenegro used internet in the last 3 months, and 80% of them use internet every day or almost every day. Next slide, please. As expected, the internet traffic is also growing. So in 2020, the fixed internet traffic on fixed network was about 342 petabytes, while the traffic on the mobile network was about 32 petabytes. And for sure, it will continue to grow. Average monthly traffic per subscriber is about 163 gigabytes for the fixed broadband users and about 9.4 for mobile internet users. To accommodate this huge amount of traffic, the capacity of international internet links is 285 gigabits per second. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we see the coverage. So FTTH of fiber is available for 67% of households. HFC or the cable network is for 26% of households. And the XDSL is available for 37% of the household, while 40% of household, unfortunately, is not covered by the fixed broadband. Speeds over 100 megabits per second are available for 77% of households. When we look this on the mobile coverage, we see that about 81% of the territory is covered by UMTS, while it's about 79% is covered by LTE. But when you look on regarding in population, 93% of population is covered by UMTS, and 97.53 is covered by LTE. Next slide, please. So we established the geographical information system for mapping electronic communication infrastructure in 2016, and we updated the system in 2020. So we are mapping the underground ducts, posts, masts, antenna towers, main host, street cabinets, and network endpoints, and all other infrastructure which is good to hold the electronic communication networks. Based on the map infrastructure, we did the broadband mapping. So we do the broadband mapping by technology, by the speeds, and by operators. Also, the system allowed to enter the future plans for infrastructure deployment, and also for the future plan for the civil works. Agency enacted all the secondary legislation based on the law on telecommunication relevant to deployment of infrastructure, and we promote the shared use of infrastructure, and all infrastructure is built and used and maintained on the way to support use share of infrastructure. On the left, you will see a few screenshots from the system, and they shows the mapping of infrastructure, broadband coverage by the speed, technology, and the operators. On the right, you see the Montenegro divided on about 1,300 settlements. With the light gray are marked the settlements covered with the broadband speed, and the rest settlements are marked with a different shade, which actually represent the density of household in that settlement. Unfortunately, this is represent about 40% of the population, which is not covered. So our goal is to speed up the coverage of this area of the Montenegro, where there not exist the economical interest for provisioning of services. So this will be all for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pavle, and thank you very much. Congratulations for great progress towards the mapping of the infrastructure and all efforts leading towards addressing the digital divide at the country level. And now let us move to our next speaker, coming from the representing monitoring and evaluation code project of the Ministry of Economy of Kosovo, Sara Shenteti. And I'm handing over to you, Sara.
Thank you, Mr. Ponder. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this great session today. I'm going to share my screen just for a minute, please. Yeah, it seems to be okay. Yeah, hi everybody. Today I'm going to present the Kosovo Digital Economy Project, which is the most impactful tool of the Ministry for Economy in Kosovo to upgrade the hard infrastructure and enhance the digital skills of Kosovo people. Ministry of Economy through the Code project aims two main development objectives, which seems to be quite similar with the Node projects of the North Macedonia, to improve access to better quality and high-speed broadband services, and to improve access to online knowledge services. Next slide. We have four core activities within the Code project: finance and digital connectivity, with a focus in uncovered rural areas, and connection with the fiber optics of unconnected mobile towers to upgrade and enable them for 5G readiness technology, deployment of the national spectrum monitoring system, setup of the National Research and Education Network, and provision of trainings in field of ICT for Kosovo youth. Through the activity of finance and digital connectivity, we have supported the projects for the deployment of high-speed broadband infrastructure in the identified uncovered areas and access for households and public institutions located there. All the identified areas are in remote zones of Kosovo where internet service providers did not see any business case to invest in. So based on this fact, we have developed a grant scheme through which we have subsidized the ISPs to 50% to implement the deployment in the respective settlements. This percentage was increased to 80% for the most remote areas where were living just a few households and where was difficult terrain. The requirements of the project were deployment of high-speed broadband network through fiber to the home technology. And beside this, the ISPs has also to ensure free of charge access to guaranteed download speed at 100 megabits per second for a period of 5 years to the public institutions located in these zones. They also must ensure the open access to the subsidized infrastructure in line with the EU broadband guidelines. To date, as you might see, we have financed the deployment of the fiber to the home technology in almost 163 villages across 21 municipalities. Above 4,000 households, 76 schools, and 27 healthcare institutions have benefited from the network installation. By the end of the 2021, or at the beginning of 2022, we will reach almost 100% broadband coverage in Kosovo. In terms of hard infrastructure, we also support the deployment of the National Spectrum Monitoring System for the Regulatory Authority of Electronic Communications in Kosovo to facilitate investments in wireless infrastructure rollout through technical inputs on radio frequency bands assignments and usage. Through this system, a regulatory authority will ensure more efficient spectrum monitoring and control in the country. We are also covering the soft infrastructure in the code project. Last year, we have established the National Research and Education Network in Kosovo to connect the higher education institutions in knowledge sources and to provide digital sources as well as Azure Stack on-premise with all included services. This network, by the end of 2020, has become a member of GÉANT Association, which is the pan-European data network for the research and education community. GÉANT interconnects national research and education networks across Europe, enabling them collaboration on projects ranging from ICT, biological science, arts, cultures, etc. We are also focused on the enhancement of digital skills of youth in Kosovo. Kosovo has the youngest population in Europe, as you may know. 34% of entire population is under 18 years old, and highly skilled in the ICT field. The ministry currently is running 2 training programs funded by EU and the World Bank, which will support access to digital skills trainings for youngsters in Kosovo in the most in-demand ICT skills in the world. Trainings are being provided in 7 biggest regions of Kosovo as face-to-face and online courses, and it is expected to benefit more than 4,000 young people. Through these trainings, we believe that the beneficiaries will increase their employability in the local and international ICT market. That was all for this round. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for this update, and congratulations for a lot of developments addressing so many different issues so pertinent for the digital transformation. And ladies and gentlemen, now let us move to the voice of the private sector. We started with the strategic message keynote from one operator, but now let us move to Alexandra Radojewicz, who is representing Entel today and is with us today. So if possible, I would invite you to take the floor now.
Thank you, Yaroslav. I'm very happy to be here and to represent MTEL strategy and to tell you more about how we balance our hard and soft infrastructure. So basically, without further ado, I'll, because of time constraints, jump straight to the 3 main points I wanted to highlight today. Those are concerned regarding startup ecosystem, telemedicine, e-health, and digital skills and our e-learning program. So basically, please move to the next slide. I'm trying to be prior one. I'm trying to be very, very quick because we are over time. So basically, our hub that we are the first telco that established the hub in Montenegro. We are the first and the only one, actually. And basically, what we have done so far, we have built a sound digital ecosystem with startup ecosystem. We have partnered with the government and we have partnered with the universities in order to support startups within Montenegro, but we also support freelancers and provide free co-working space and meetups for the community in order to foster creation of new ideas, but also we provide a hard infrastructure in terms of free premises and free data and internet connection within it. Because we have a side event on this topic, I'll move to the next one. We also have a side event on e-health, so please change to the next slide. So in the last 2 years and 3 years, actually, we have a hardly investment in e-health and telemedicine infrastructure. We have, even before the COVID, provided teleconference system that actually connects Clinical Center of Montenegro with the general hospitals of Berane, Pljevlja, and Bar. It provides remote consultation and examination of patients, what was proved during the pandemic that it was crucial for some patients. And the second phase of the project was concerned with teleradiology, and teleradiology is basically allows our doctors to have high resolution scans, and that the scans could be recorded and read from the distant location, even from home, but from the other hospitals in Montenegro. We have also provided a free call center during pandemic. So basically, even before pandemic, we realized the importance of the digitalization of the health and what was proved very useful during the crisis. However, as my colleague from UNICEF said, it's also we were concerned with the most vulnerable groups, and we wanted to have inclusive connectivity for all society. And we have provided free internet access to 70 schools last year and to more schools the year before. And thanks to the vision of our director, Vladimir Lucic, we were able to provide even that last mile for some rural schools. That was very important. And we also provided free add-on mobile data to the digital platforms that were published during pandemic. So in this manner, we wanted to support our youngest customers and to provide support to the whole society in terms of availability of education during the crisis. So basically, those 3 projects were all CSR projects. The investment was more than €1 million, and it was very important that we have a good feedback from the community regarding those. So basically, I will give the floor back to Yaroslav, as I believe that in the second round, I'll tell you more in depth about the connectivity. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Alexandra, for highlighting these specific projects, very much relevant to the driving the digital transformation at the country level, and very important, driving also demand for the high-speed connectivity, which is essential in order to make really digital transformation 2.0 reality. these dates, and congratulations to all those addressing not only the services but also focusing on the marginalized groups. And the children, of course, require special attention, not only in terms of providing them the equipment and the needs for connectivity, but also special care of creating the confidence in the use of the ICTs. And this is something also where the role of the private sector is essential, as you are equipping the millions of the children browsing every day on the internet and having different experiences. And this is very important that we are keeping an eye on this as all stakeholders. But this brings me to the next question, and I will turn now to the second part of our panel, more interactive discussion. And as we were talking about the children, let me turn to our colleagues from the UNICEF and their experience in terms of equipping those vulnerable groups and those who need the digital most and become the efficient user. So what would be the concrete actions to accelerate the access to the digital learning for the children? Marlene, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jaroslav. This is a very important session, and I think that the colleagues have already raised the issues that a lot of things is going on. So one of the really important aspects is how do we bring this partnership together and how do we coordinate better? So I would like to stress 2 points, both that the already existing long-term investments is already taking place in the Western Balkans, and it's very, very positive to hear all the speakers is addressing this from an inclusive dimension. At the same time, I think that we also, with our experience, would like to stress the importance of finding the innovative solution. Meanwhile, the broadband expansion is underway. It has been a number of colleagues that have intervened on the technical side of bringing the online to the remote areas and to the villages, and this is something we would like to underline, that how do we make the best investments and most efficient investments by targeting the location of those living in digital learning poverty. I also hear that mapping is then one of the concrete actions that will lead us then to how to implement really effective solutions. And we can't underline enough the importance of bringing both offline and online solutions, particularly those who have not been reached by this, by investing in hubs and learning device concepts, that we can have offline classrooms that can act as a server and storing local digital content and individual learner records, as well as using local area network as for now. The other dimension that colleagues also mentioned is on the teacher training. Again, a lot of activities is going on, and here I would like to underline the importance of how can we make these trainings, teacher trainings, and upshifting of school personnel to be inclusive, having in mind of how can we reach to children living with minority languages, as well as with living with disabilities. And one example that I would like to raise is that also the cross-country learning. And one example we have is the collaboration and partnership with Achilles Foundation on digital learning tools for language requirements for refugee education, for refugee children, which has allowed us to use the same content with translation that spur these cross-country learning and gives us economy of scale of what we are already doing. I also would like to emphasize the importance of that we invest in promoting digital schools, digital skills for those that we see that is likely to fall a little bit behind in the world of work, and we pay particular attention to girls and STEM in this regard. And we, in our support, we are working with inclusive digital learning for teachers, and is having a target of 5% of the teachers in 4 of the Western Balkan countries. And here I think that is a scope for collaboration with partners to see how we can make the most efficient gains in this respect. And last but not least, we need to invest more in evidence generation, and that is something that is very close to our heart, of actually understanding what works for children living in poverty, and to use the young people themselves to tell us and inform us of what is working. And that goes also with listening to the grassroots levels, for instance, teachers, and also sharing their innovations from the local level and enhancing community of practices to ensure that with this unique opportunity that we have to transform the society into digital upshift, there is using the potential from the grassroots and those living in digital poverty.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for raising the importance of addressing the issue of the human-centered approach towards the digital transformation, which we are trying to promote wherever it's possible, make sure that no one is left behind, and in particular the vulnerable groups are addressed and their needs are really exposed at the level of our priority lists. But this brings us to our next speaker from Serbia. Badena, you were talking a lot about the project, which is really a strategic breakthrough in terms of the connectivity and providing the basis, the foundations for the digital transformation at the country level. But what additional actions you would see that would drive these demands and ensure the inclusiveness for this digital transformation process? Badena, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This is a question that we consider really important and really interesting for us in Serbia. So I will try here to keep my answer brief and clear. So I think what we first think when we are talking about stimulating the demand for connectivity as well as for the uptake is probably the broadband cost reduction, affordability, or subventions, both for enabling broadband connectivity and the terminal equipment. But what I think that it is really important that we cannot forget about and that we need to focus on is to make the broadband widely available to bridge the digital divides and to make available a wide variety of e-services. So I think that different e-services ranging from government, e-education to e-health and telemedicine, and ranging from e-commerce to, let's say, a narrow specialized e-services like, for example, e-tourist guides. Together with the possibility to use them at any time and at any place is the real and the best stimulation that we can have for the increase of the demand for connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. I see that you have a very comprehensive approach to be applied to the country level, and this makes us super happy to hear that. But let us move to your neighboring country, North Macedonia. We've heard a lot about the Node project. But for us, always the question which raises is how to finance strategic projects to make the things happen. And not to remain at the level of the plan strategies, but really to engage the different stakeholders. Will you aim at going with the more public funding, or it will open also the gates at the possibility of investigating the public-private partnership in context of such a project?
Thank you for the question, Yaroslav. Yes, the idea of the Node project is not new. Actually, 2 years ago it was initiated, and the initial plan was actually had in mind that this is the implementation of the National Operating Broadband Plan of North Macedonia, which would primarily focus white zones, some Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi locations, and public institutions. Having said that, it only makes sense for it to be state-owned and state-operated, meaning it should also be funded by state funds. But it's not only the question of who is paying for the bill and how expensive it is going to cost, but sometimes it is also the question of how it is going to be operated and managed once it is built. And this is something that in general, and maybe in the Western Balkans, a little bit more than in the rest of the EU, state-owned, let's say, resources can always be managed better than they are, let me put it that way. So having said that, we did a cost-benefit analysis which showed that actually the project, if it is implemented in a public-private partnership, it will cost much less, and it will be fully functional much sooner, and there are no OPEX costs to the state, having in mind that it will partner with existing telcos. We also have the experience of Kosovo taken into consideration. So code is similar to what Node is going to be in North Macedonia. So the cost-benefit analysis said that public-private partnership is a better solution. Having that conclusion, we are now going to perform a feasibility study. We were granted a WBIF grant for the feasibility study, which we rejected. We will fund it with our own funds, and depending on what the feasibility study is going to say, we will choose one or the other model. Personally, and this is not me speaking on behalf of the ministry or the state, but just a personal preference, public-private partnership would be a better option.
Thank you very much for this message, and I'm sure that the private sector is very happy to hear about this, that if we are thinking about the role of the private sector in supporting the strategies of the countries and being engaged in such a strategic developments at the country level, and on the other hand, country creating an enabling environment, fostering the investments. And this brings us to the next speaker from Montenegro. And Pavle, what should be done to speed up deployment of infrastructure, especially in rural areas? From your point of view of the institution which is in charge of creating an enabling environment, in particular focusing on the regulatory aspects. So Pavle, over to you.
Thank you. So the law in which is transposed the Broadband Cost Reduction Directive should be adopted by Parliament as soon as possible and implemented. This law should make improvement in the following areas: streamlining permit granting procedures, increasing transparency and reinforcing a single information point, expanding the right to access the physical infrastructure controlled by public state bodies, and improve the dispute resolution mechanism. Also, we should transpose the European Electronic Communication Code in our legislation. Also, besides the transposition of BCRD and EEC to increase the coverage, Digital Information Strategy also envisaged establishment of Broadband Competence Office. Also, we should harmonize different laws relevant to protection and deployment of infrastructure and lower fees for deployment of infrastructure alongside the local and the state road, and also lower the price for use of land owned by the state or municipalities. Based on the law on critical infrastructure, we should make a list of critical infrastructure in the electronic communication sector. Also, in the beginning of the next year, is auction for pioneer bands for 5G, and 5G should be available commercially by end of the year. To achieve this, we will have to introduce a lot of incentives. And on the end, as we saw that we are in the right, going to the right direction, the comprehensive study, which is prepared for the Ministry of Economic Development, will define the white, gray, and black zones, and also provide cost-benefit analysis for different model of deployment infrastructure in particular settlements. And also, they will also propose us different measures to speed up the deployment. So this is what should be done in Montenegro to narrow the gap between the rural and the urban areas.
Thank you very much, Pavle. It's a very comprehensive approach, and we keep the fingers crossed for the implementation in the next steps. And let's now take a look at our colleagues from the Ministry of Economy of Kosovo. So what are these ministries' short-term goals related to the ICTs? So we'll be able to elaborate more, Sarah.
Okay, not prolong it too much. I'll briefly go through the main activities. As I mentioned during my presentation, yes, Kosovo has a very good broadband penetration, but we still have low quality and low speed internet compared to some of other Western Balkan countries. Two main factors for this situation are insufficient capacity of international internet connectivity and increased demand. So the ministry will plan and implement a project to upgrade the capacities and intervene in the bottlenecks of the infrastructure. This may lead to the investments on backbone, backhauls, and other types of infrastructure through the grant scheme developed. We will also publish new calls for applications for connecting remained unconnected mobile towers with high-speed broadband infrastructure to enable them for 5G technology. And in line with this, we are hardly working to introduce 5G fixed gigabit connectivity in Kosovo. We will soon do 5G piloting, which will enable operators to advance as soon as possible in providing new services and technologies, such as those enabled by 5G network. In the other hand, the ministry will continue to support the access to digital skills trainings for youngsters in Kosovo to bridge the digital skills gap in a sustainable manner. Furthermore, we will work to supply the Kosovo Research and Education Network with some of the equipment needed to create conditions, space, and place for the private sector and academia to have opportunities for research and initial test phase for products and service development. We are also in a process of developing the new Digital Agenda 2030, which is the most important activity for Kosovo, which will serve as a main roadmap for further developments and future actions for ICT sector. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So a lot is happening and a lot is to come shortly. So thank you very much for this, Sarah, keeping the fingers crossed. But let's us now give the floor to our voice of the private sector. We've heard a lot about this, what is planned, what is ongoing on. You as the operator, of course, you are under pressure of expectations from the citizens of our region to fulfill our dreams of being the part of the gigabit society. And of course, talking about the gigabit society, we are immediately thinking about the current implementation of the 5G, which could bring us to the next level of the digital transformation. So how does MTEL foresee the development of the soft infrastructure initiatives in the coming years, and what will 5G bring in terms of inclusive connectivity? I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Jaroslav. Very interesting and inspiring question. And as my colleagues priorly said, the level of hard and soft infrastructure improved in recent years in Montenegro and in a region as well. During pandemic, MTEL proved that we have a resilient hard infrastructure that supported the society and the economy in period when the borders and when the airports were basically within the lockdown. And in the soft infrastructure, MTEL is actively participating in regulation creation and such as the digital transformation strategy of Montenegro, but we were also involved in a smart specialization. Smart specialization was the first adopted in Montenegro, and ICT is identified as a crucial pillar for development of other verticals. And with the 5G, I believe that within network slicing, we will have the opportunity that we haven't had before. Actually, we already now see the demand for high performance and flexible communication service. And as a result, network slicing is emerging, and the network slicing is basically making and bridging the gap between the public network that cannot meet the current demands and the special ed private networks, which requires higher investments and even in some cases more equipment on the premises. So basically, I believe that with network slicing technology, we will be able to basically have a better and more meaningful connectivity in which way network slicing actually is individual virtual networks built on the shared infrastructure and designed to serve various business purposes. And within network slicing, we basically combine all good sides of a public network. It could be easily installed and set up like a public network basically within the 5G. And we also have the good size of a private network. We have the ability to have traffic isolation and high degree of customization with a good level of security. And the network slicing is even more than public plus private. It's rapidly deployed, configured, and modified while providing a wide area coverage. What does this mean to our society? And I hope that after the licensing, we will have the 3 waves of deployment. The first wave will be the more stable one, and it will focus mostly on traffic isolation. But in the second and in the third wave, we will have more inclusion and more end-to-end solutions in slicing automation, and when the slices will become more dynamic ones. So basically, we will include more verticals like energetic sector or agricultural sector that were left behind, and we will cover the areas. But this also is demanding for us as a telco, as we will not just stand aside and provide the connectivity, but we will be also more deeply included within the industry development in Montenegro, and we are happy to be able, after the 5G rollout, to support other industries more meaningfully. Thank you. So over to you, Jaroslav.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexandra, for this voice. We are really pleased to hear that the private sector is committed to support the digital transformation and is seeing the great future. Ladies and gentlemen, I was informed that our time is coming to the end, so that's why with this we will be wrapping up. During this session, we have learned that meaningful connectivity that is fit for purpose can be realized only if the infrastructure development focusing on the supply side, including coverage obligations, regulating competition, or public funding are balanced and complemented by soft infrastructure focusing more on the demand side. With regards to the hard infrastructure, broadband mapping, a coherent strategy, commitments of the public budget, cooperation with the international organizations are key to ensure development of telecommunications sector, particularly with regards to the fixed services. With regards to the soft infrastructure, digital economy strategies are key to bridge between broadband development and meaningful and digital transformation. However, also other government policies aimed at the digital human-centric development, including, for example, developing digital skills, investing in research, ensuring inclusion of minorities are also important, together with the CSR initiatives of the private sector that are fundamental to ensure a robust digital transformation. So ladies and gentlemen, with this wrap up of the session, I would like to thank you very much for great contribution. Big applause goes to our distinguished speakers who took time to discuss and inspire and also create the vision of this what is in front of us, in front of the citizens of the economies of the Western Balkan. I would like to also thank very much to the conveners and to the public who was with us, patiently following this session through the portal or for the YouTube. So thank you very much with this, and with this we can declare this session and close, handing over to our colleagues in Podgorica. Thank you very much one more time.
And thank you, Yaroslav. Thank you very much. Thanks to your panelists, those here on the stage and those online. And now we will have a coffee break. And here in the Balkans, we use coffee mostly for socializing. And so you can grab a cup of coffee in one hand and your mobile device in the other, and use the possibilities of our platform to connect to each other and to find the next inspiring person, the one who will define your next digital steps. See you in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.